oh my god, how many plastic bags do you want to use for everything over here? It's just ridiculous. Hey guys, Jacob here and welcome back to Bark's Life. In today's video I want to talk about what it's like to be an Australian coming to Taiwan and the adjustments that I've had to make over the last year and a half, just in regards to the cultural differences and just some things that are uniquely Taiwan that I've had to get used to. So I've made a little list of some things that have really just stood out to me, so they're the things I'm going to discuss today, and let's get straight into it. First thing, and this was really just my only real concern or drawback on coming to Taiwan, was the air pollution. It's something that I really had to adjust to coming here, and when I first visited here on a holiday in 2018, I remember driving to Nantou and just looking out the window along the highway and seeing this haze, and first, I didn't want to say anything and I just thought it was maybe fog because it was morning, because that's all I would consider it to be growing up in Australia. But then it started to dawn on me that it was probably air pollution. And coming from Australia and the city that I grew up in, Adelaide, it's really clean, the air. And growing up in the Adelaide Hills, there's a lookout near my house where I grew up and it's called Windy Point. And from that lookout, you can look right across Adelaide. You can see over in Port Adelaide, they have the electricity plant where the two big spires are, and you can see that clear as day. You can also see straight over to Glenelg and actually pick out specific buildings, knowing what they are, and looking right out into the ocean and see container ships just moored out in the Gulf. That's not something I really have seen here. I've been to lookouts here in Taiwan, and up in Nantou there was one we went to, I can't remember the name of it, but I remember looking out and I could only see maybe a kilometer or two in front of me before it was just all hazed out by the air pollution. That's just one of the adjustments, and this is one of the things that I've had to get used to coming to Taiwan. The other thing in line with the air pollution is that you pick up a cough, what I call is the Taiwan cough, or more of a throat clearing. Always constantly clearing my throat now, which kind of started to happen about 6 months after coming here. It's just this kind of all the time. Everyone here does it, and I know it's from the air pollution and riding around on scooters and just the constant influx of fumes into your lungs. So that's just something I've had to get used to. It was my only real concern coming to Taiwan, was the air pollution, and yeah, it's just one of those things I've had to get used to. The second thing, and this is probably one of my most favorite things about being in Taiwan, while also simultaneously being one of the most frustrating things in Taiwan, and that's driving in Taiwan. My favorite thing about it is riding around on a scooter. It's a lot of fun for me, and it's also so convenient, especially with how small some of the roads are here and how congested it can get. It's really easy to maneuver through traffic when you're on a scooter. My most frustrating thing about driving in Taiwan is just how inconsiderate and selfish some people can be on the roads here, and just have a complete lack of care about anyone else's safety, and just only really thinking about themselves, and neglecting the fact that there are people riding around on scooters with children on them, and sometimes without helmets, and just pulling ridiculous maneuvers where it's just a complete lack of respect for anyone else that's on the road. I find myself shaking my head all the time at some of the maneuvers people make and how they just don't pay attention to what's going on around them, and honestly it's just really dangerous, and people die as a result. The thing that baffles me most about it is that Taiwanese people are really respectful and considerate, and they are some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. In a comparison to Australia, way more respectful, way more considerate of each other, but when it comes to getting on the roads, and you get behind a wheel, it's just a completely different story. I just can't understand it, really. There's just some things that I see here on the roads that you just wouldn't get away with in Australia. There is a lot of surveillance in Australia on the roads. So there will just be speeding cameras permanently set up along main highways, main roads, where they know people like to speed, so that people don't speed, because if you do, you're going to get a fine. These days, there's cameras at most main intersections. So if you do run a red light, which I see a lot of people do here in Taiwan, you will be getting a fine. As soon as you cross that line, if that light's red, you're going to get flashed by the camera and you're going to get somewhere from, it can be from $500 to $1,000 fine. There's just other things like turning right at an intersection when the light is red to go straight, but people will still turn right. Cars and scooters. A lot of people speed here as well and run the lights, do stupid things that put people at risk, and I just can't wrap my head around it.
I mean, this is just mad. Honestly, it's just stupid. It doesn't work. How many people do you want to crash?
Enough of that though, let's not get me too wound up about it. Number 3, surveillance and safety. The safety aspect of Taiwan is so good compared to Australia, in my opinion. From my experience, I'm amazed at the surveillance as well. Just the whole island is locked down on this massive grid of surveillance. If someone did something in, say, Taipei, they could literally track them through the streets, through buildings and everything, all the way down to Kaohsiung if they wanted to. It's just very locked down. It's very well set up. They've really got the surveillance thing sorted. You can't get away with much here and not be seen. On that topic though, the safety side is really good. Like, I'm preconditioned to lock everything, be very protective, be very watchful of where I leave my stuff, because in Australia, it's just not the same as it is here in Taiwan. People leave their doors open here and it's very unlikely that someone's ever gonna walk into your house and do anything to you. Whereas in Australia, if you left your door open or you left an invitation to come into your premises, people will do it and they'll see if you're home. And if you're not home, they might break in and they might take your stuff. I didn't experience it so much in Adelaide, but I had experienced it in the past. But in Perth, I experienced it quite a bit leading up to actually moving away from Perth and coming to Taiwan. In the last 6 months of me living in Perth before I came to Taiwan, I had intruders in our complex that we lived in. On a regular basis, I caught someone jumping my fence at 5 o'clock in the morning, trying to steal my clothes. I'd also catch people leaving things in my courtyard just to see if I'd pick it up and clean it up to see if I was home. So they knew that if they came back the next day and that piece of rubbish or whatever they left in the courtyard was there, that no one had come out to check it, which means that it might be likely that no one's actually home and that they could try and break in. I'd even just come home and my mat would be flipped over because people were looking to see if there's a spare key under the mat. I was actually quite on edge for about 6 months before coming here. And there are still things that I do here that are not necessary just because I'm conditioned to do that from living in Australia. Number 4, plastic bags. I've probably used more plastic bags living in Taiwan for the past year and a half than I have in the last 10 years of living in Australia. Just everywhere, there's so many freaking plastic bags. I don't know what to do with. Big bags of plastic bags. The reason why this is such an abrupt culture shock for me is because in my city in Adelaide, they banned plastic bags in 2009.
South Australia's ban on plastic bags comes into force tomorrow.
So you can't use those plastic bags anywhere. They're completely restricted from being produced and used anywhere. And in 2021, they've also outlawed single-use plastic cutlery, straws and the stirrers that you use to stir your coffees in coffee shops.
Well, South Australia's history-making ban on single-use plastic starts tomorrow. For the first time, plastic straws and cutlery will be prohibited across the entire state.
So that's just something I'm not used to using. Adelaide is actually globally renowned for being a leader in being eco-friendly and trying to minimize the impacts on the environment. Just coming from that kind of culture, I actually have a bit of inner conflict from having the plastic bags because I know that one day they're all going to end up either in the ocean or as landfill. So just coming from a culture where we don't use them, it's quite abrupt to see how many get used and that there's a bag for almost everything here. You go to a night market and every piece of food you buy gets a bag. It's excessive for me. Number 5, food in Taiwan. Food in Taiwan is amazing, tastes great, but there's a lot of things in food in Taiwan which, being someone who's very health conscious as well, yeah, I'd have a lot of issues with the level of sweetness in the food here and I guess the use of things like vegetable oil. Now, I'm not a nutritionist or anything like that, but I've done a lot of self-study over the years of what things are good to eat and what things can lead to disease, and trial being vegan for 4 years, and I did a bunch of other different things, and I'm at a point now in my life where I have a diet that I'm very happy with and I know what's good for me, and I can sort of mitigate a little bit of the things here in Taiwan that aren't that great for you. And that's why I've been able to do things like lose 25 kilos in just over a year. So there's a lot of things about Taiwanese food that I love, like love, but there's a lot of things about it that concern me as well. Everything's very sweet here in Taiwan. There's a lot of sugar in everything. There's a lot of sugar in the teas and the coffees. The main thing I think is bread. The bread is so sweet here, and it's just such a contrast to Australia, where we're more on the salty European style breads, where you just don't find this level of sweetness in just plain white bread or wholemeal bread. It tastes like fairy bread almost. Fairy bread is like this bread that we'd make in Australia, where you get a piece of white bread, you put some margarine or butter on it, and then they put those thousands of hundreds and thousands on the bread, and it just makes it taste really sweet, and it's usually served at kids' birthday parties and stuff like that, and it's just, that's what the bread here in Taiwan tastes like. It's hard to get used to when you're making things that are more on the salty side, like you're filling this bread with salty things and the bread is sweet. So yeah, just something that I'm not used to. Also, and I don't want to be too harsh with this, but vegetable oil, it's complete trash, and that stuff will give you cancer, and I see it used in everything here, and it's just not good for you, and you need to be conscious of what that stuff does to your body. I'm of a European background, so olive oil is the nectar of the gods, and it is really good for you, and I just see vegetable oil being used so much, and yeah, it just really concerns me because I know how bad it is for people's health. If you were going to take my advice, then I would say use olive oil for everything, and you would not have to worry about any harmful effects of what that oil is doing to your body. Second to last thing is the Air Force presence in the skies here is just constant. It's multiple times a day. I get flyovers just right here outside my door. I can see the jets in the mornings going past, and yeah, it's just not something I'm used to in Australia. We don't have someone across the strait who is threatening to take us over. I understand why it's there, but it's just not something I'm used to. So that is one of the other things that's really abrupt for me, and it's in my face. And I remember that when I came here on a holiday and I first heard the jets going over, looking around and everyone seemed to be cool with it, and I was going, what's going on? Like, shouldn't we be concerned? And they're like, this has been happening every day for years. It's just a normal thing. Wasn't normal for me, so that was something that I had to get used to. Final thing, and this is something that I'm culturally never going to get used to, but I've accepted it as a thing here in Taiwan, and I know it's something to do with the appreciation of the food, but in Australia, a lot of people would tell you to be quiet because you guys eat pretty loud and pretty open-mouthed, and you talk with your mouths full a lot. And growing up in the households that I grew up in, it was stamped out at a pretty young age. In a lot of places in Australia, they're going to tell you that they don't want to see your food and they don't want to hear you eating it.
For real?
What?
You gonna sit right there and slurp that little bit right in front of me like that, make noise, man.
That you need to keep your mouth closed and don't talk with your mouth full. I understand it's a cultural thing. I understand that it's just something that I have to get used to. I'm not complaining about it, but it is something that gives me a lot of anxiety because it is something that I'm actually quite allergic to in a way. I think they call it misophonia. Where you have a anxiety reaction to people eating loud or the chewing noises. It's just something that I had to get used to being around Taiwanese people, but in Australia, it wouldn't fly for very long around a lot of people. They would ask you to be quiet. Anyway guys, that's my list of things that I had to get used to when coming to Taiwan from Australia. Please don't get me wrong, these are not complaints about Taiwan. These are just the things that I've noticed and the things that I'm not used to experiencing coming from a place like Australia.
Look out! Whoa!
I understand that our countries are culturally different, and I embrace the fact that we are culturally different. I love Taiwan, and it really is the country of my dreams. There really are so many things about this country that make it feel like destiny for me to be here, but I will elaborate more on that in another video. If you like this video, be a mate and hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and turn the notifications on so you don't miss any future videos. Have a good one, guys, and I'll catch you later. Yeah. Ooh.